Here is a very large feather, the one that may have written the tomes of Shakespeare, for example. And it comes from a white-backed vulture, which of course is one of the very largest birds that we get out here. Probably sits about 2.5 to 3 feet tall, the white-backed vulture, and this comes from its wing, and it's one of the primary wing feathers. And you can imagine, I'm just trying to think how I can best do this. I'll actually show you a diagram next time you come across. But that's basically the bottom side of the wing is covered in these amazing feathers. And that's the edge that goes towards the direction that the bird is flying. I'm just making sure that I get this right. And this sort of longer edge in the opposite direction. Now what I want to do is put this under the microscope. And I want to show you how the barbs, barbules, and the barbicels stick together. So let me focus in properly so that VM doesn't have quite such a black screen to look at. There we go. Now that there is a barb. Now the barb is the individual filament that you can see on the feather. So when you pick up a feather and you pull it apart, you pull those filaments apart, you know, or most of you will know how they stick together a little bit like Velcro. Now if you look carefully there, you can see the little hooks. Can you see those little hooks there? Those little hooks are exactly like Velcro, and they help to stick the barbs of the feather together. Those are called barbules, and on those hooks themselves are even more hooks, even smaller ones, called barbicels. And that is how a feather like this sticks together. Now, when you see a bird preening itself, and when a bird preens, what it does is it puts its beak into some oil glands, normally around here, or underneath the tail, they're oil glands. What it does is it runs its beak over these barbs, and it pushes the feathers back together. Now, if you are tremendously patient, you can sort of reconstitute a feather so that it looks almost perfect once you've been through it. And also, if you ever feel a feather like this, you can feel that it is oily, unless it's very old. So the tips of these barbs are very old, and so they're quite dry. But the middle is very oily. And what that does is it waterproofs the bird's feathers, and it also just keeps them in pristine shape. Because, of course, once this feather has grown, once it is at this size, it stops growing and the blood supply to it ceases. So as it's growing, in the end here, you find a whole network of blood vessels that goes in, and I suppose nerves as well, as it grows until it gets to about this side. Then that sort of blood supply is cut off. And because of that, the feather cannot self-repair itself like most of your body will. If you pull a hair out, the hair follicle will repair itself because it has a blood supply and a nerve supply. That does not happen with the feather. And so they have to spend time, birds do, fixing the feathers all the time, putting the little barbs and barbicels and things back together so that when they fly, they don't plummet to the ground and get a very bad headache. What do you think?